we are experiencing much like a geyser of oil in the entire Gulf of Mexico. And I realize that there are catastrophic conditions going on across our planet where people have been suffering. So I just in no way am negating their importance. I just want to focus on this one thing because it was so personal to me, and it makes a point. My brother is still in Pensacola, and I always hold a dear, dear place in my heart for Pensacola. Not so much even, and I don't mean this in a negative way, the city was fine, but the beaches were where I grew up and where I suffered as a child and where I healed as a child and where I spoke to my sense of God as a child and as a young adult. And I have always in my adult life, no matter where I lived in this country, and no matter where I traveled across the globe, I always went back to a resonance with that spot. That we have a national seashore there, and we actually have what's called Fort Pickens, which is a national. It's a federal government land. So on either side of what's this real condensed kind of carnival of a beach area, you have just national seashore, which means it's completely barren of any buildings, of anything other than nature. And you have the white sands, white quartz sands of the Gulf of Mexico and water, and that's it. And you can go for miles and miles and miles and miles and be on those beaches. And so it's just always felt like my connection to heaven somehow. So to watch what's going on in the Gulf of Mexico, certainly I immediately had a sense of concern. And then and I try to stay away from the television to a large degree because of the vibrational energy that it brings up within us. In fact, there are a lot of people who don't watch any TV or watch any news information for the simple fact that it can't then shift their own vibration from staying in a higher space or a non-stress space. And that's a very good thing, by the way. And I went for probably 8 years of my life without doing that. I do watch a little more of it now because I do have high schoolers and kids in high school, that just information is there, and we've gotten a little lazy about that. And so I'm very aware of the oil going on, of the situation. Take that and then look at or consider that the other night, let's see, last Wednesday or Thursday I flew out and went to the mountains to visit my friend David, who I grew up with in Pensacola. And on the ride up, my brother called from Pensacola. And my brother is a love. He is an executive. He makes a very nice living. He's a commercial cobia fisherman. He lives in Pensacola because he adores those beaches. And he called when I just gotten off the airplane, off the flight, and we were driving up the mountains, and he called and he called and he texted and he called, and he was absolutely freaking out about this oil spill. That's what I'm calling it. We know it's much more than an oil spill. And he was just insane about it. And I don't mean that I don't mean that from a disrespectful place. He was extremely distressed, and I can understand why. David and I, on the other hand, were driving and watching these texts and these things coming in and these phone calls and talking to him, and we were trying to remain calm, simply because my friend David works for CNN. And he sees it 24/7, and his drive to the mountains is purposely where he checks out of that, and he purposely doesn't have phones or televisions or any of that up in the mountains for the weekend, or he says he couldn't function in the planet. It's too intense for him. So we are trying to figure out how to handle this conversation with my brother. And as the time went on, we did a little bit of maintenance on that, and then we got off the phone and we talked about it briefly a few times over the weekend, because we were both thinking about it and we were both worrying about it. And I was trying to get right in my head about this and what I know to be true, and I do know a lot of things that are to be true. I call it, you have beliefs and you have knowing, and there are things that I actually know. And they're my knowing, my truths, and they're not belief-based. And others are my belief-based ideas. And we'll get back to that. So we both tried to remain calm over the weekend. And I was thinking about those things. Well, then I got back, and Monday night, my brother started texting again. And he said, this time I'm calm. He texted, I'm calm, but get your kids to the beach, and we live on the Gulf of Mexico now. get your kids to the beach because it might be the last time. And so, and I just texting back and forth with him going, I understand. And I was trying to comfort him and also trying not to get upset. And then I quit texting for a minute. I was really getting ready to go to bed, and the phone rang. And I looked and to see who it was, and of course it was him. Well, and he knew I was up. There's no way I could not answer the phone. But my concern immediately when I went to answer the phone was that, oh no, now I'm going to have to talk to him, and then I'm going to have to go to bed with this information in my head. And I'm already upset enough as it is because my own intelligence, human intelligence, is telling me that we're in trouble, that the planet could be in trouble with this. And the ramifications of this economically and emotionally and physically and ecologically, oh my gosh, ecologically, and all of the sea life. And when I was thinking about that, so I got on the phone with him for a little bit, and after a few minutes I had to tell him, and I know I think it hurt his feelings, but I was like, honey, I can't keep talking to you about this. I have to sleep tonight. This will give me nightmares. I cannot do this. But I'm with you, and we're all holding space for it and light. And so I got off the phone. And then I stood there for a few minutes and I started thinking about it. And I had realized that somewhere along the way over the week prior, I had actually started doing what I knew was natural in my nature to do. And that was I had started holding space, what I call holding space for our oceans and for the planet in a way that I had gotten lazy about probably in earlier, in more recent times. And I thought about this as I got in bed, that I had actually remembered during the week while I was in the mountains that I felt like a couple times during the night that I was vibrating underneath the oceans, and that there were a lot of beings there vibrating underneath the ocean holding light. And so I was just kind of watching that and not trying to attach to it and not getting from a hero point of view, or I'm going to, vibrate all my energy into the seas or anything like that. More just noticing that I was doing some things on a different level that really weren't taking mind intelligence. They were just naturally happening. And I think some of you know what I'm talking about out there. Now, what I want to say is that when I got in bed, I was talking to Brian about it for a little bit, and I said, it's very unsettling, and he did too, and he acknowledged some of the things about it too, and the global proportion, that it could have, and just the experience of what this means. And so then I said goodnight to him, and I laid there quietly in the dark, and I thought to myself, I want to wake up. How do I want to feel when I wake up in the morning? And I said, what I want to do is I want to wake up and feel like everything in my life is a blessing. I want to feel like every single thing about my life, every way I feel, is a blessing. I want to wake up and know what that feels like, regardless of what is going on the planet or anything. That's how I want to feel. And actually, that being one of the things I wanted to feel was a blessing. But I didn't say that. I just said I want to know what it feels like to have everything in my life wake up and feel like it's a blessing. So I went to sleep, and I slept like a baby, which was rare because we'd had the full moon last week, and I've been traveling in different beds, and sometimes I don't sleep well because I have a mind that goes 90 to nothing. And when I woke up in the morning, I felt peaceful. I felt really, really at peace. And I remember as I awakened, looking around my room and seeing the light coming in and noticing that Brian was lying there sleeping quietly and I was quiet. I felt very much in my own body, not connected or disconnected from him, but just very much in my own experience. And I had that moment where I was like, wow, thank you. I was actually saying thank you. And then I realized, wow, I feel like right now every single thing in my life is a blessing. And I was smiling to myself going, oh, it worked. Which I know, but I was acknowledging that it worked, that I had planted that information into my psyche and into my consciousness. And then I lay there for a few minutes, and I was like, okay, I was laying there long enough to start thinking about the world at large, and in came this oil thing again. And I kept it at bay for a few minutes, watching the experience I was having around it, because I knew that there was an edge to it from my psyche. So I got out of bed and I started thinking about this oil thing. And then I started thinking about my astrology. And I asked to be guided through my thoughts on this, which happens a lot when I'm moving around the house in my own quiet space. And I started thinking about something that I understood about astrology. And what had happened was, Brian had read my chart like 5 years ago, and that's the first time I really started to understand the astrology, and that this is really a blueprint for my physical life, and that I actually was the author of this blueprint, the architect of this blueprint. And with that, I had to come